Good morning and welcome to the December 10th, 2015 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. We've got just a single item on the list today, but if anybody wishes to speak to it, please fill out a form and drop it with the secretary to the right of the dais. At this time, we'd like to ask that any member of the audience that has a cell phone or other electronic device can either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out into the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. All items on the Zoning Board of Adjustment will be heard individually, and the first one is the approval of the November 25th, 2015 Zoning Board of Adjustment minutes.
Approval. Second.
Karen moved approval, Linda seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is a variance request to allow the construction of a 24-foot by 24-foot detached garage and requesting a variance to the side yard setback from 8 feet to 4 feet. Property is located Central Boulevard and Lanark Road intersection. There's a single-family dwelling located on the property. On that southeast corner is the location of the proposed detached garage. That shed has been torn down. Property zone low-density residential district. Central Boulevard is identified as a collector street, and the future land use is low-density neighborhood. Here we have the proposed detached garage, 24-foot by 24-foot, which would require a variance to reduce the side yard setback from 8 feet to 4 feet. The detached garage does meet the low-density neighborhoods design guideline of reducing the prominence of garages on properties. However, the applicant could construct a 20-foot by 24-foot detached garage and still meet the minimum required side yard setback. As you can see on the rear yard, it's 5 feet. That is the minimum required rear yard setback for a detached garage. We have received one call in opposition to the requested variance. Here's a look at the property looking east. Back here is the location of the proposed garage. Looking south on Central and to the north, and adjacent properties to the west, and this is looking east on Lanark and west on Lanark. And then this is where the shed was, and the backyard, and the detached garage would be approximately in that area. Again, there's nothing on the no situation on the property which requires the variance. It's 424 by 24. The applicant could construct a 20 by 24 and still align with the driveway that's existing there. For these reasons, staff recommends that the variance request be denied. The applicant is here to give a little presentation. I believe he submitted a speaker request form.
Yes, Jacob Johnson.
Okay, I'll keep this short. I just have a few main reasons why we'd like this variance request to be approved. Basically, we just feel that the construction of this garage will help the value of our property and the surrounding properties. We'd also like to be able to easily access the garage while being able to back out obstruction-free instead of having to come around, turn the corner, and then come out this way and come back that way. The most affected neighbor on the south lot line has written a letter of support for our project and stated that his property was granted a similar variance in 1996, and I have brought a letter from him today. Homes on each side of our property have standing garages built within 2 to 6 feet of the property line. So we're not asking for special preference here. We understand that there's some other issues that can come up, like for example, a 1 hour rated firewall on that lot line. We have no opposition to doing that if the zoning board feels it's necessary, and we're willing to work with any other requests anyone may have there. You know, and if a 4 foot setback doesn't work, you know, maybe we can work for a 5 foot setback. I don't know, maybe that's for a different day. I've spoke with Black Hills Power, and they say we'll not be encroaching on any of their private easements, as they only have a private easement on what would be the east lot line. And my service would go over the top of where my garage is, but we're planning on trenching my Black Hills Power service into the dirt when we do the dirt work for the garage, which is actually what they prefer. And there's no other utility private easements that we know of at this time. I just have a few pictures to show you and then I'll be done. Okay, this is the survey that Fletcher just had up. Basically, you can see where the garage is. Yesterday, I took a measurement of where the corner of my proposed garage is to the corner of the adjacent house. This would be Eric Christensen's house, who does support my project. That's between 13.6 and 14.6. So it's not extremely close to that house, I guess is what the point of that is. It's 5 feet from the covered deck going this way, and 6 feet from the step to the covered deck going that way. This is the letter from Eric Christensen, the neighbor. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Basically, the main part of this is he's saying at the bottom here is zoning variance was requested and granted for his property in 1996 to build a similar garage. He has no opposition to ours. That is the most affected neighbor. This is a picture of Eric's garage. And this is an approximate, I guess, measurement to his neighbors. And this is the house just adjacent to mine. Approximately 5 foot 4 inches is what I got down here. You can see I kind of did that so everyone knows. This is the house next to that. So this would be 2 houses south of mine. Approximately 18 inches. To the lot line. So I just wanted to share that. And then this is that same house, 2016 Central Boulevard. And this shows basically how close that garage is built to the house. It's between 3 feet and 4 feet. I think it was about 3 foot 4 inches approximately. And I understand times change, and this was probably granted long ago. But I wanted to share that as well. This is the third house down that's south, 2020 Central Boulevard. We're thinking this is less than 2 feet approximately from the lot line, or at least where the fence is, which I understand is probably not exactly where the lot line is, but probably pretty close. So here's a picture of that one. And then one more. This is 1922 Central Boulevard. This is the house that would be just north of mine. And this one is built within about 4 feet 4 inches of the lot line, it looks like, approximately. So basically, my point is we're not asking for special preference. We're just looking for basically the same treatment that everyone else on the block has gotten. And that's all I have for today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions or comments from the commission? Galen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Johnson. I think you answered all the questions that I had. Most importantly is the concurrence with your neighbors, and it sounds like you've got them on board. And I also noticed the character of your neighborhood and the other garages. I drove by and saw that they were also close to the lot line. So I tend to agree, and I'd be willing to support this if we could get others to agree with me as well. Another reason I remember October 8th, we had a similar situation of a detached garage on West Chicago Street. We granted a variance from 8 feet to 5 feet. Very, very similar case, and I guess I'd be willing to not really rest, but use that as an example of a previous case where we've granted these sort of variances. So with that, I'll just move to approve the variance, and we'll see where that goes.
Need to state a reason.
I'll use, let me pull it up here. Can we say something along the lines of,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
perhaps if I could assist
that'd be great.
Galen? So, two of the reasons, as noted in the staff report, that you could cite for granting the variance would be that it is a use that is otherwise permitted in the district, and that if that portion of the structure that's within 5 foot of the lot line has a 1-hour firewall constructed in its design, then it would not be injurious to the neighborhood. So if that is the motion maker's concurrence.
I'll concur with that.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Galen, seconded by Steve. Steve also has a comment.
Looking at that from my understanding, where he's building is back away from the home, so there's no house or structure across from him except for the other garage. Is that correct?
Let's pull that up 1 second. So the adjacent structures, like he showed, it would be 13 feet from the corner of that structure to the south.
Continue.
And their detached garage is located on the south side of their property.
So normally when we want somebody to construct a firewall, as he had mentioned or whatever, normally because we're close to the adjacent home on the other side. So in this instance, I guess I don't see that. I don't see the fire department here, but normally that'd be a question we'd ask, and normally if it's close.
Sorry. It's a building code issue. If it's within 5 feet, it needs to be a firewall.
Okay. Thank you.
Karen, I believe you have a comment.
Yes, thank you. I understand that the neighbors have constructed garages that are really close to homes and property lines. My thought is that you can construct a garage, although it's 4 feet or 4 feet shorter than what you want. You do have reasonable use of your land. And based on the criteria that we have as a zoning board, that is one of the criteria that says if you have reasonable use of your land, that is not something that we necessarily would approve. So in that reason, I am not going to vote for the motion on hand. I think that you could still build a garage, just not the one that you want. You could still get in there, although you have to kind of curve to get in that one stall. That's my reasoning. So just wanted you to know why I'm voting no.
I don't have my usual screen up, so if there's any other.
Steve and planning.
Oh,
John.
okay. Steve still. Planning staff? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had one question. You said you did have one comment that came in or objection?
Yes.
Any stated reason or just they objected?
Just the closeness to the property line.
Thank you.
All right, I'm back online. I think I don't see any other requests to speak on this item. We have a motion on the floor to allow, to approve a variance. Any other comments on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with Karen's dissent. Any discussion items or staff items on the zoning board of adjustment?
Second.
John made the motion to adjourn and Linda seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Zoning board of adjustment is adjourned. We'll now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for December 10th. Items 1 through 3 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 2, 15 PD 042, and item 3, 15 PD 043. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Community Planning and Development Services Department by the close of business on the 7th full day, calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 3 staff would like removed from the consent calendar? Are there any items 1 through 3 the Planning Commission would like removed for separate consideration?
Move to approve.
And are there any items that the audience member? Any audience members like to remove an item?
Move to approve.
All right. Steve has made the motion to approve items 1 through 3. Linda seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moves us to item number 4.
Thank you. Good morning. Item number 4 is 15 UR 024, conditional use permit to allow an on-sale liquor establishment for the service of wine and beer as an accessory to the existing salon. Located at 526 6th Street in the Central Business District. This is the existing Best Little Hair House in the Black Hills. The applicant is proposing to allow the sale and service of beer and wine as one of the services that she would be offering as a part of her business. Let me take you through some slides. Location of the property, located within the Central Business District. Aerial view of the property is one suite, comprised of about 2,306 square feet within the existing structure. Future land use plan shows property is appropriate for the downtown area. And Main Street and St. Joseph Street, located in the north and south, are principal arterial streets. Look at the floor plan for the establishment. The area outlined in pink there would be the existing Best Little Hair House, to give you an idea of the layout of this building and everything within it. This would be Tally's right here, Tally's Silver Spoon. 6th Street on this side, St. Joseph here. You can see there are 2 entrances to the facility, one along 6th Street, one along on St. Joseph. Look at the 6th Street entrance. It's a little hard to see on that screen, but the on-sale sign is posted. I'll look along St. Joseph Street, so that would be Tally's immediately to the left. I look along 6th Street, Tally's this time on the right. St. Joseph Street looking west, looking east. 6th Street looking south, and 6th Street looking north. This is the entrance on the St. Joseph Street side. And one more look at the 6th Street entrance. In the past, the Planning Commission has considered the Central Business District to be the appropriate location for an on-sale liquor establishment, especially when in conjunction with another primary use. In this case, it would be the salon. The applicant has indicated that they would typically be operating between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. during the week, and from 8 to 5 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. They would be closed on Sundays. Based on the Central Business District not having a requirement to provide on-street parking or landscaping, it appears that all requirements of the conditional use permit are being met. And with that, staff is recommending that this request be approved with the stipulations noted in the staff report. The Tina Fletcher from the Best Little Hair House is available to answer any questions. I believe she submitted a speaker request form. Staff is available for comments at this time.
Thank you. Tina Fletcher?
Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this. This is kind of in request of our clientele. Currently, we have, we've been operating there for almost 30 years. I personally have been there for 18 years, and mostly it has to do with more evening hour appointments and also weddings when we have more of a party type of venue. Currently, people constantly and do bring things in, which I can't control that. So this would at least bring the control within the salon to be able to distribute it that way. And really it's just a added extra benefit for the client, for relaxation. We do have a spa within there also. So many of the clientele does request during their spa services. If you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the commission? John?
Just one. When you have a beer and wine license in that, I'm sorry. When you have those services on site, are those complimentary or are those additional sales?
No, we're going to actually do additional sale.
Additional sale for all sales. Thank you.
Kim?
This is not an unusual situation because of the other businesses that actually provide beer and wine with this type of service. So I would support this.
Thank you.
I move approval of the
Karen made a motion to approve. Steve seconded. Any further discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair, if we could just clarify that it's to approve with the stipulations as outlined in the report.
Sorry. Yes. All right. Motion maker and second concurred. It is to approve with stipulations. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5. Thank you, Tina.
Item number 5 is the final plan development to allow a mix of residential and commercial uses in the building, which known by many names. Sports Rock is what we'll go with, or Fatty McGee's, and it's located at 321 7th Street, just not too far away. The applicant is looking at purchasing the building and bringing in some new uses. Let me take you through some slides to start with. Property is zoned general commercial district. You'll notice half a block to the south it is zoned central business district, which doesn't have a parking requirement. Existing building is 3 stories with a basement. What the applicant is proposing is a restaurant in the basement, which would open after 4 p.m., a restaurant on the first floor, or to start with, a church on Sundays on the second floor, with the ideal use being 4 apartment units, and then on the 3rd story, to open up the uses, they're proposing office for the parking exception they're requesting, but the ideal use would be 3 apartment units. So the applicant is requesting an exception to reduce the parking from 187 parking spaces to the 1 van accessible space, which is located on the west side of the building. There have been a number of variances over the years for the use of this building, the most recent being to allow 2 restaurants on the first and second stories, which opened after 5 p.m. most days. As you can see now, and for the last year or so, the building's been vacant. Can't get anyone in there. So the comprehensive plan identifies removing barriers to adaptive reuse of existing buildings as a design principle and goal for the downtown district, which this is a part of. There is a downtown master plan being worked on currently, which hopefully will have some take on what parking should be in the downtown. However, this is a building. It's existing. There's nowhere to put additional parking. If you take a look at the uses, the church on Sundays would, with a capacity of 260, would require 65 parking spaces. If we went with what the ideal use of that is as residential, it'd be 8 parking spaces. So we're saying 65 just on Sundays. The basement restaurant being proposed, opening after 4 p.m. So that's when the use would come into, the parking need would come into effect. Well, there's also a cell tower located on that west side of the property, which additionally adds another 2 parking spaces to the request. But for what was in there, it was 104 parking spaces required to 1. This is going up to 187 for the maximum use of the property. It's not to say that that use is going to be what is in there permanently. Even the church, like I said, would just be on Sundays. The restaurant in the basement opening after 4 p.m. Site plan showing the existing building, the location of the tower, the 1 parking space, some floor plans. The applicant wrote a very in-depth and detailed letter of vision statement, really, for the property and the reuse of it. Here we have a picture of the building. So again, to reiterate, for the parking exception request, this 3rd story opening up to office, although the ideal use is 3 units of either apartments or condos. The 2nd level, the ideal use being 4 apartment units or condos. However, the use that someone is interested in getting in there would be a church with a capacity of 260, and that would only be on Sundays, when typically businesses and offices located in the area would be closed. The 1st floor, opening up to restaurant, no restriction on time. The applicant has not requested an on-sale liquor use with this request because just can't get enough specifics on it. When you looked at it, the previous variance being approved only till opening after 5 p.m. is that typically you get uses like bars in there. And hasn't been a good use in this building or in this area. So really opening up that use and the time so that we can get something in there and coming back in the future if someone wants to come in with an on-sale use so we can see specifically what they want to do. And then basement level, restaurant opening after 4 p.m. More detailed description in the applicant's letter of intent. Again, the on-sale would come when they have more specifics in mind. So as the comprehensive plan identifies removing barriers for the adaptive reuse, the barrier here being the parking requirement for the property. There is existing on-street parking, 3-hour parking and metered parking on Apolda Street. So for these reasons, staff is recommending that the final plan development be approved with the stipulations noted in the staff report. Any questions for staff at this time?
Steve?
I've been involved with this building several times, and the issue always comes up is because it's right across the street from the downtown area. If it was another block over, there's no discussion. And so I appreciate everything that you brought forward. And then when I look at it as far as church on Sunday, you've actually got a city parking lot not too far from there where they're probably almost will be parking. So I again, once again, will be in support of this. Thank you.
We've got a number of speaker request forms as well. If there's no other comments at this time from the Planning Commission, I'll start with Fred Thurston.
Good morning. My name is Fred Thurston. I'm an architect in Rapid City, have been since the late 1870s. I've tried to retire, but I'm not doing very good at that. My wife said I really suck at retirement. I'm presently the primary architect on the McGillicuddy House. I also have Thurston Properties, which is a construction company. It's a development company, actually, that buys and restores historic buildings. I own 3 historic buildings in downtown Rapid City. Every one of them had been vacant for more than 2 years before I purchased it. And I was even contacted by a bank, please buy this at half what they was owed on it. The building should have been demoed by many accounts. The second floor of Swanner's building on 7th Street was in such bad shape. I also own a historic building in Pier, the Hyde Building. There were 16 leaks in the roof with pails and children's swimming pools, inflatable swimming pools around that building. I own 2 historic buildings in Western New York. I'm telling you this because I know what it's like to have old buildings. Were all vacant when I purchased them. They didn't have parking when I purchased them. They all now have parking. All 3 buildings in downtown Rapid City are either leased parking or have their own parking lot that we purchased and developed. I know what it's like to have a building that's vacant, but I also know that with creative work, creative design work, it's possible to do it. Bob, was it, 8-10 years ago that we met together and talked about your building? The Planning Commission was going to deny you a variance for parking, and I'm the only person that stood up, wrote a letter to the commission, and said if he would not open until 5 o'clock, I would provide my parking to him to be able to use it, and as long as he cleaned it up, he could use that. We've been back, 2 or 3 times to the commission because they wanted to change the hours. There are a lot of good, strong businesses downtown, and you need to realize that by opening it up and taking off the requirement for parking, it's going to kill other businesses. It's going to kill our historic downtown. I've been on the business improvement district with you, John, for a long time. We started back long before it was actually the business improvement district when it got turned down. We need a strong downtown, but strong downtown needs parking. That building does not have a sewer. It's tied onto my sewer. My sewer is a private sewer that goes from the Rapid City Fruit Building, which my daughter and I own, right across the street out to Omaha. That building that we're talking about that wants the parking tapped onto it at some point in time. We didn't have any trouble before they put the restaurant in there. Since the restaurant went in there, they flooded our basement with sewage 3 times. My daughter, who has the basement building space down there, will talk to that. We talk about 187 parking spaces. Do you have any idea on what that will do? Even using, this is on, is this on? Can it be on? Even using the figure that she came to with only 50% of the spaces being occupied, for 187 cars with 50% of the spaces being occupied, the green line shows every space will be occupied for, 8 blocks? You and I both know that there are less than 50% of the spaces downtown that are available. Here is Apollo Street on Wednesday at 11 o'clock in the morning. It looks like there's maybe one space there. That's looking west from this corner. That's looking west, thank you, west from this corner. Looking east, there may be 1 or 2 parking spaces available. Across the street in front of my building, there's 3 parking spaces available. You know, first of all, there's not 50% available for parking. That's going to kill businesses downtown. That's taking up the parking in front of this building right here. It's taking up Main Street parking on between 8th and 6th Street on both sides of the street. Look at the ramifications of what you're going to do to the other businesses. You say you need parking now, and you're talking about building a parking structure. You know, you're killing the business downtown if you approve this. There are creative options. There are things that can be done. One which we already agreed to and approved was to allow it to open after 5 o'clock so that there can be functions in there. There are ways of developing parking for this specific lot. I met with the mayor a couple days ago and laid out one of the ways that I designed 10 years ago. Within a half a block, they can quadruple the amount of parking there. But someone has to take the ball and run with it. They have to be able to be willing to spend money like I had to do in Pier, where I had to buy a lot, tear down buildings on that lot, and make a parking structure out of it. So I could have 20,000 square foot of office space that are rentable. And now Senator Rounds is in the space, the public defender's office is in the space. I have a full building with a great building that is going to be LEED designed, or is LEED designed, will be LEED certified. I beg you, don't kill our downtown by allowing this to happen. I also did a evaluation, of 100 parking stalls, and it's the same. The downtown doesn't have that much parking. Yes, there are solutions to the problems, but not just eliminating the parking need or parking demand. Everybody else has had to follow it. They can find a way to do it also. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellie Thurston?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ellie Thurston. I own the Marketplace on 7th that's located directly across from the building in the Rapid City Fruit in the lower level. If this were to pass, it would be absolutely devastating to my business. We are a resale furniture store, and people are not going to drop off furniture or pick up furniture 2 to 3 blocks away. We're a destination store. The bottom line is, if this passes and there is no frontage parking, our business will go down. If what they're trying to get past and going to have permanent tenants, I believe they need permanent spots. You can't have permanent tenants without permanent spots. The parking is just one of the problems. The other major issue is, to reiterate, the sewage line. We owned the sewage line, and then it was then connected. We've had reoccurring issues, and this is only going to get worse if there is a restaurant or a bar or for whatever development that goes on in there. It's going to keep backing up and backing up. Right now, I've plugged the sewage in the basement of the Rapid City Fruit, so that wouldn't happen. I had sewage smells coming up. when Hooky Jack, or excuse me, Sports Rock was in there previously. I don't want to see that happen again. It caused damage to my goods and is terrible smell for any customers. In closing, I would like to see these issues handled properly before they fall through the cracks of other businesses and or building owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Seeing none, I've also got a speaker request from Tansy Winchell. Would you like to speak?
I'm another tenant of the Rapid City Fruit Building, and my biggest issue is the smell from the sewage comes up and bothers my business. I'm another salon, and parking. I have no place. I don't have a ton of parking spots. I'm not that big, but on average, I do have 4 clients that maybe are coming in at the same time, and to not have the parking would be a problem. That was one of the reasons I chose to go to the area in which I did, was because the parking was available, and my clients wouldn't have to worry about parking tickets or having to walk a couple blocks in the snow. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Vicki Bierman.
Good morning. My name is Vicki Bierman, and I've been an owner of Victoria's Garden for 26 years, of which 17 of those years have been at our current location at 327th Street. This location was chosen in a large part because of its parking availability for our clientele. Our building owner supplied the required parking for our tenants and clients to ensure the success of our business. Our typical customer is in the flower shop for about 15 minutes. It's a destination location, as Ellie mentioned. People are on their way to an event, and they stop in, they come in, order their flowers, pick them up, take them to go, or plan a future delivery. And then they're on their way to their next errand or event. Floral purchases are an impulse or last-minute quick gift, and our clients want to pull up to our front door, pop in, and be able to leave. And when they leave with their gift, they don't want to carry it around the block, especially in cold weather, and which would damage our product. Industry studies, national industry studies of retail floral shops tell us that this parking availability is needed to maintain and grow a successful business. Even though I feel Victoria's Garden has outstanding reputation for quality product and service, if our customers repeatedly have to park more than a block away from our front door or drive around the block several times to find a spot, I feel they will gravitate for more convenient location and move to the path of least resistance. Most other flower shops in Rapid City do have their own parking spaces, and I feel it will not be difficult for people to find that convenience elsewhere. Again, we chose this location because of our parking availability and our commitment from our landlord, Fred. And so I just want to say thanks for your time and consideration. And I would like to invite you to visit our location at any time, and not to buy flowers. I'm not trying to sell flowers, but just to come over and see and experience what is happening in that area of downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. I don't think anybody would rule out buying flowers either. Galen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm just really undecided on this. I see the problem with not having the space for parking. I think shooting for getting 187 spaces is ridiculous. That's not going to happen. I guess what's the biggest hang-up for me is the residential uses and not having, at least the spaces for the tenants of the residential or even the office places for that. I think if we could get, the 10 to 20 spaces secured just for those uses alone, I'd be a little more comfortable with it than letting the people that want to use the restaurant find their own among the parking ramp and other places downtown. But having at least a couple parking spots secured for the residential and commercial uses is my biggest hang up right now, and I'm not sure I see the solution, but I also want to see this building being used, so I guess I'm really undecided right now what I want to do.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Fletcher.
Regarding the residential use, one of the things comprehensive plan says is having that mix of residential and commercial uses provides basically round-the-clock vibrancy, so there's always going to be someone downtown in that area, on the streets, walking their dogs or anything like that. Then there are other apartment buildings downtown that don't have sufficient parking for their residents. I'm one of those that lives in one of those, and you figure out a way to move your car is what you do.
Thank you. Steve?
Like I said, I've been involved in that building several times, and one of them, of course, involved Bob and Fred, and what I liked about that is they actually sat down and found a way to make it work between everybody, and part of it that came up was the 5 o'clock. Of course, that also was moved, and they were allowed to open at lunch at some point in time. So, I understand Fred's fear. I don't see it as shutting down those businesses. I look over at Kohl's. They just put $2 million in that building, and now they're putting almost another $1 million in the basement for an arcade. And I'm sure everybody's going to park, but it's working down there. And I look, and I see Delmonico Grill has no parking spaces, and then go on and on about the places down there. I know friends that live down there have no parking. I don't know how they do it. I would be more concerned, I think, with the concerns of those in the building across. Like Vicki was saying, it would affect. I used to have a business downtown. We had no parking, but everybody else's employees parked in front of me, so I never had a parking space available to me because somebody else's employees were always parked in front of me. So I do understand that. But what I liked about what happened in the past is the people who had the building actually got together with those that were going to be affected and kind of worked out a plan. It doesn't seem to be happening this time, which concerns me a little bit. I understand the concerns, and I'd rather see some sort of discussion going on about how we can alleviate it, and I'm not seeing that this time.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share some of the same concerns that Steve's mentioned. I would love to see this building in good use because it's a historic building, and it needs to be used. It needs to have people in there and turn back to a vibrant building again. I am looking at the building across the street and all those people who have offices and stores in there, and that is not, you don't have that much parking in front, and I understand your businesses which require some parking in front, and Fred has given you folks a private parking space so that your clients can be back there, or you can have your own places back there. So that's worked out well. And I think in the past when other stores or restaurants were in the current building that we're talking about, when it was after 4 o'clock, after 5 o'clock, there's less damage to the other businesses in that regard because it's later at night. And I've driven through town a lot. I mean, I go down that Apalda Street, I go to this building a lot, and I go down Main Street in St. Joe a lot. And the restaurants downtown are really becoming vibrant, and I think that's wonderful. The new things in Main Street parking area or Main Street Square, and all the restaurants. You can see the people parking up and down Main and St. Joe, and I think that's wonderful. But the idea of having, if the restaurant's a good restaurant and you have a lot of people there, that's a lot of parking. And I see people coming over here to park or someplace that's convenient, and it would be the one behind this building that we're talking about, and I can't remember the name of all those places, but there's a huge parking lot there, but that's theirs, and I can see people going over there to park because it's so close to that building. So I have some real concerns about the parking issue. I think that one of the stipulations in the staff report was something to do with the sewer. They had to make sure that worked. So that's an issue that would be between the building, people trying to do this building and stuff. But my concern is with the parking, and I would rather see this continued if that was possible, to see if something can't be worked out. Seems to me at one time that, I don't know if Bob, if it was your building or your office or store, restaurant, bar, if that was, at one time I thought they were renting some spaces from Prairie, the insurance company, and I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I thought that happened. So if there's a way to do find some parking for people, I think that would be a better deal. But the people living down there, a church, even an office, I think is wonderful. It's the parking for the restaurant at unlimited hours that has me concerned. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Kim Schmidt?
I guess I have a question for staff. When we have stipulations, is there a way to require a landowner to purchase or lease spots from adjacent or from the city as part of the approval process?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I believe that the applicant, who you may want to ask to hear some discussion from today regarding the research she's done in acquiring such parking provisions from private property owners as well as what public parking is available. If it were there, that would have probably been brought to the table today. So we can't stipulate and require it. What you could do is, your choices today would be to act on the plan development with the exception to reduce the parking as it's been requested, or you could continue this to allow the applicant to visit with additional area property owners and potentially other lands that may be used for parking to bring back some kind of agreement or lease agreement that would secure alternate parking other than just street parking.
Thank you. Kim, that answer your question. Steve?
That was going to be my suggestion. I haven't heard from the person buying it. I'd like to hear from them as we're going to be making a decision here. I'd really like to hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is here and answer any questions you have.
That would be great. Julie, if you're willing.
Well, I am willing. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
giving me the opportunity. I did make some notes on comments that were made and questions that you had, so maybe I can address those, and then if there's more. Let's see. In reference to the condition of the building, if you haven't been in it, it was built in 1891, I think, and it's been completely gone through mechanically, electrically. It has been fire sprinklered. It has a new roof. It has an elevator. It's an awesome building in awesome condition. So I think I would take exception to the fact that the comment that it should be torn down. It's really in very good condition. My background is civil engineering, so I know a little bit about construction, and structurally it's very good, and it has just tons of character, you know, the big beams, exposed brick, very much what's everybody's kind of wanting right now. In answer to the sewer, there is a problem with the sewer on the service line that serves Mr. Thurston's building, and that is that when it was installed lower than the sewer that's in the street. And so what happens to him is sewer, as we all know, flows downhill. So there's a pretty simple solution to his problem, and that's just to install a valve so that if it ever did back up from any business, that it wouldn't back up into his. Let's see. I've been informed that in the past, I think Bob and Fred came forward with issues that Fred had with his building about being able to load furniture in and out of the building or delivery pickups for the flowers. And I certainly support what they're saying about needing to be able to do that. And I believe that the city gave them a designated 1 or 2 loading spots right in front of his building to accommodate that are labeled that way. The sole purpose of that was to address that issue for him. Going to the parking. So the parking is obviously, you know, a conundrum, right? Some date prior to this city meeting, that building was allowed to exist with no parking. And so whoever buys that building has this problem to deal with. as do the surrounding businesses. So the question is, what's the best way to do it? And when you look at that number of, is it 187, that humongous number, it's really not a realistic number, but it's the way that it's required to be counted for code. For that number to actually exist, it means that church would be in session, both restaurants would be open and full to capacity, and offices would be completely full. And that is not a situation that would ever exist. So it's the way the numbers are calculated, but it's not really a real number. You know, the difficulty that I as an owner have is that that building has been for sale for a couple of years. They've tried to lease it for a couple of years with no success. So as a buyer, as a single woman, I mean, my pockets are not that deep. If I were to get that building and be very restricted as to what I could lease it to, that's really risky for me. But, you know, basically looking at the fact that they haven't been able to find tenants for 2 years. I'm completely optimistic that I will. I've had people contact me. People are starting to hear about it. I've had people say they already want to rent. It's really not my intention to probably lease to the church, but my preference is to do residential on the 3rd and 2nd floor. But I don't know for sure that I'll get those tenants. So that's the next step. I mean, right now what I'm trying to do is to get through planning and zoning, to get a variance for the parking. The reason I had to go through this bigger process is because I'm combining residential with commercial. And that's why I had needed to do this plan development. And so my next step really is to start to nail down who those tenants are. And although I have, my desire is that the 3rd and 2nd floor be loft apartments, I need some flexibility and latitude in that, and that it might be some other tenant, because I might not be able to find that many. And obviously, I don't want a building where my people can't get to, I have the same concerns Fred does, right? I mean, I don't want to run a business where nobody can park there. So in a general parking sense, what I did was, it was anecdotal, you know, I mean, I didn't commission for a parking study, but I tried to go out at the times that I thought were the very busiest. And so I did it, and you know, that's the daytime hours. In the evening, most of the businesses close. The 60 parking spots across the street in the city lease lot open up. So evenings hours are, for the most part, not an issue. So it's the daytime hours that I tried to focus on. And I simply went within a block of the building and wrote down how many stalls there are and how many were occupied. And then I did it again at the noon hour, because I thought, well, that's probably another good candidate for the busiest time. And I think you saw all those numbers in there, but you know, over half are empty. And so I think there is a perception by some people that there is inadequate parking downtown. But I think the reality is that it is underutilized. For example, the lease lot, which is I think 62 stalls across the street from me, is leased, completely leased. They have an 8-year waiting list, and they will not take any more names on that list. However, the 2 days I went out there, there were 20 stalls sitting empty. So, you know, it's like everything, even though it's fully leased, it doesn't mean it's fully utilized. And that is what you see downtown. There's actually quite a bit of available parking. In fact, way more than I will need, because I will never have church in session, 2 restaurants in session, and offices fully occupied. In answer to the question about the tenants, so because I can't go to the other surrounding building owners because they don't have adequate parking. And so to meet their needs, they need their parking stalls. So my plan is this. There are 10-hour, I mean, my residential tenants will most likely not be there in the daytime. They will be at their jobs. So really, the time that they need them are after hours, after 5 o'clock. My desire, and what I plan to do, is go to the surrounding people and ask if I can lease them from 5 until 8 a.m., because that's really the hours that I need them. You know, there will come a time, presumably the city's working on rezoning that street, as I think you know, that those requirements will go away for my neighbors, and they will be able to lease those if they want to. Some of the strip mall behind me, that's pretty fully utilized. And if you look at those numbers that I had in the parking, that parking lot's, that would be the most desirable for me because it's right adjacent to the back of my building, which is right where the handicap entrance is. But, you know, those are the things that are yet to come for me. Those would be the things that for sure I would want to provide to my tenants because they would want those. So that will be my approach, is to look at leasing parking stalls from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. I don't know what I didn't address, so please feel free to ask me whatever you'd like to ask me.
Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, any further discussion? Anything that any folks haven't heard yet, or the chair would entertain a motion then on this item. John?
Like Steve and Karen, I think I've been here on this building for the last, all of those names that were on there. So here we go again. We all like the building, and it's always the parking issue that goes with it. Although the sewer issue was the first time that I'd heard that. So if that can be fixed, I certainly wouldn't approve this without getting that fixed. I mean, that's not good. I did have a question as we went through this, whether there's any option for those businesses across the street to have, during certain hours of operation, customer parking signs put up. And I don't know whether that's a bad priority or bad suggestion or whatever, but I understand, since I do buy flowers when I go to that building, that I don't want to walk around the block. And I don't want to fight the restaurant crowd for that at noon. So I don't have a yes and I don't have a no on this. Familiar with the property, and I get to buy donuts next January. Sweet. Sorry about that. Having read what you would like to do with the building and hearing from the immediate neighbors that have invested in this, I just don't think that myself, for sure, and maybe others that have spoken this morning, I know that guy. I don't want to chase you around the deal to come back, but I want to say no, and I can't say yes. So I guess probably I'll make a motion and see whether anybody else wants to do it and say, I'll shut my phone off. Thank you. If anybody else would move for a continuation and come back with something more concrete on this parking issue with regard to the plan development. And so my motion is to continue to the next meeting.
I'll second that.
The motion's been made and seconded to continue to the next meeting. Could you get a date for us, Vicki?
January 7th, 2016.
January 7th. And Steve would like to speak to the issue.
I guess what I'd like to see too is, in the past, and I'm sure you all recall, we knew what was going into the building. So as we had the discussions, you know, with those affected, we knew what was affected. Right now, and thank you for speaking, but I have no idea what's going in there. It could be this, it could be that. It's tough, like John said, to be able to do something when what goes in there could have a huge impact on what happens there, whether you have office spaces or whether you have a restaurant or a church. I mean, it makes a difference. And, you know, church is going to be there Sunday. Office space is going to be there every day. So as we're having a discussion as we move forward, I guess I'd like to hear more about, you know, narrow it down a little bit so we can actually have discussions. As it is right now, it's really difficult because we really don't know. And always in the past when we did it, we knew exactly what was going in there. We got the parties together, discussed it. Nobody really liked, I think, the outcome in the end because nobody really won, but it was opened. And so I'm sure the same thing's going to happen here. At the end of the day, you're not going to like everything, and you're probably not going to like everything, but hopefully we can come to some sort of agreement where we can actually get the building open. Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. And I had similar comments also. I think it'd be difficult for any of us to vote yes or no at this point. And I think one of the suggestions you had about going to the neighbors and asking about the parking after hours, parking from their lease lots, that would be helpful. Anything that you can provide that would help us get past the parking issue. If this was Central Business District and there was no say in it, that would be different. But based on the criteria that we have to go with, and sometimes it's not all bad because parking is a big issue. And although there's parking in the ramp or there's parking 2 or 3 blocks away, boy, you'll find this community hard pressed to say, I'm going to walk 2 blocks to go to eat. I mean, it's sad, but that is part of the reality. And I just think there's an issue with that parking. So I concur with the fact that we're going to continue this, and hopefully maybe you can visit with some other folks and try to come up with some other answers and help us get past this. So that's my comment.
John?
Thank you, Eric. Just one other comment, too. The latest research that I have, and I've shared this on a number of occasions with other people, about people that live downtown, interested in your comment. Some research that was done about a decade ago shows that the developments of downtown revitalization projects, there are 2 really big groups that live downtown. People that work downtown, which means that they may need that parking during the day, and as often as not, may not have a car, so they don't need a parking spot. Interesting. The other thing is, codgers like me start downsizing. And we like to live downtown if it's robust and revitalized. And so we would need at least 1 spot. I don't know what the code calls for an apartment, whether it's 2 or whatever, but typically downtown is less than 1 car per spot if that's the housing people that you're checking in. So as you went through your plan and trying to identify residents, I'm kind of going back to some of that research that I looked at and have looked at for over a decade, and would say that some kind of parking accommodation, if residents are going to be put in that space, need to be accommodated. How you do that, don't know. Don't have that answer. Just know that there's like 0.75 cars for those lofts, and people that work downtown need a place for their car if they have one all day. So those are just comments that I'd offer. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any further comments from the applicant? Or?
I would just say that I think it's 1.5 stalls per apartment is what code requires, and those are in those parking counts. As far as wanting more information back on parking, I guess I would ask for a little clarification on what you're looking for. I mean, there's a building with no parking.
Yeah, I can try to paraphrase, and please jump in if I'm putting words. But I think what the folks up here are looking for is a little clarity on more clarity on the uses as a way to evaluate the parking needs, and then also more clarity on the possibility of leasing parking and the opportunities for the parking spots for those uses.
Okay. I will follow up with that. I don't own the building. I can't sign leases with anyone. My first step is to purchase this building. Purchasing this building is contingent on a parking variance. So it's a little bit the cart before the horse. I can't enter into any lease agreements with anybody. I don't own this building yet. And I'm not here asking for permission to rent it to XYZ Bakery or ABC Apartments. It's just the type of use that I'm looking for approval on. Part of the reason that I cut my vacation short by 4 days and flew back here for this meeting is because I want my future tenants to have every potential of succeeding. And to do that, you have to be open by the tourist season, which is May 1. And that's why we bent over backwards to get the material ready that we did for this meeting, because of the dominoes that happen, the construction, the leasing, them opening, hiring their staff. this will push it past them being able to do that, which makes it more difficult for them to succeed. I certainly understand what you're asking for, but that's the reason that we pushed as hard as we did for this time frame.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this morning, Planning Commission members did note that the actual number of parking spaces that were being requested to be waived was of some concern. And so what I would suggest that Julie do with our staff is to sit down and look at what is phase one, what does she need as a part of the purchase decision of the property to get those numbers to a more realistic calculation. And she did state just a little bit ago there might be some uses that may not come into the building. If we could approach that where there was a minimum that she had to have, and she brought that information back, and the Planning Commission made their decision at that point, then as those uses get in the building, we can see what parking issues may arise. She could come back in the future for an amendment to the plan development to introduce more uses as different things occur. Maybe there's additional parking structures in our downtown area. We have a downtown study that is being done right now. I think some of you are on some of those committees, and they are bringing forward an analysis as to whether or not there is actually a parking shortage in our downtown, or if it's just a perception based on South Dakota standards. So I think that'll be interesting too. So if it is your intent to continue this to the January 7th Planning Commission meeting, I would like to offer to the applicant that staff would sit down with her to see what uses are mandatory for her to go forward with this, and then come back with some different numbers.
That sounds like a good suggestion. Any further discussion from the commission? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to continue to the January 7th Planning Commission meeting. All those in favor to continue, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Staff items, discussion items.
This is our last meeting in 2015, so we'd like to take this time to wish each and every one of you happy holidays.
Thank you, and happy holidays to all the folks from the city and the audience as well. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Steve made the motion, Karen seconded. All those in favor, please leave. The meeting's adjourned.